Welcome back to Narf Projects. Today we are back after a long time on this 1948 Packard Super 8 that sat in a barn for over 50 years, I think. Last time we were working on this thing, we got the brakes kind of working and we got it kind of yard driving. This time we're going to be hopefully getting it to driver status. Right now I'm coming to you from the future, and let me say we run into a few hang-ups. Blew a hose. Look at that. Should have replaced that. We also get super lucky with some parts. So stick around and let's start working through this thing and get it back on the road. So one of the things obviously with a roadworthy vehicle that's important is brakes, and we've already worked through and got the front brakes all squared away. The hydraulics were shot obviously after sitting for 40 years, and the rears seem to work well enough for yard driving, but I obviously don't trust that, so we're going to pop these off and check out our rear brakes. And while we're doing that, I'll give you guys a little bit more backstory. So any of you guys who have been following this car probably know it's been a while since we were working on this, and part of the reason is I bought this thing at an estate auction for only like a couple $100, so couldn't pass it up, but I didn't get a title, and I figured for the price I wasn't going to complain, and I would just deal with it down the road. So before I put any more work into this thing, I wanted to kind of get the title squared away, which I did, and unfortunately in my state, Idaho, it's really tricky to get a title on things that you don't have access to the previous owner, which obviously he wasn't around anymore. Luckily I was able to find someone who can do it, and I think it's AAAautorestoration.org or something like that, and super seamless is like $300, and well, I got a title now. So that was part of the big hang up on this, and also it's just a personal project, so kind of gets thrown in the backlog. But now we're all squared away, so don't feel bad putting some work into this thing. Got it plated and everything, so fully legal now. Well, except for the non-road legal stuff going on. Apparently you can't support by the axle to get the wheel off. Yeah, apparently gotta let the axle droop, so I gotta jack up the rear end. And okay, so okay, that's not preload off the springs to get this thing out. Wow. Alright, there's our prize. Hasn't been touched in a little bit, I would say. Some spider eggs and stuff. I believe this is a press-on drum, if I'm not mistaken. So we're gonna have to use a wheel puller. Alright, so it looks like the dinky pullers I have are not gonna be large enough to bolt on here. I'm starting to remember why I left this alone. So I'll have to get a tool on order or something, and we'll have to figure that out later. But that's definitely something I want to do before we start heading down the road, because if the front brake slave cylinders were any indication of the brake system health, these ones are going to be pretty bad. So they're going to definitely need a rebuild, I would say. Although the fronts were horrendous. These ones seem to actually work a little bit. Right now I got the parking brake on, but that's okay. We got plenty more to do. Let's get this thing fired up. It's been a while. And see how it's running, because we basically have done nothing other than sand the points a little bit and get her fired up. And obviously we went through the carb, but let's see how it's running right now. Alright, so I went ahead and got some fresh gas in it. Get the hood pop. Figure if it's running okay, we'll get the engine warmed up and drop the oil, because that's one thing we haven't done yet. It's an oil change. Check if we got coolant. No? Okay. Probably have a leaking hose somewhere. But we'll fill her up for now. I believe I did replace that upper hose. The lower hose probably is still ancient. Let's see how much it takes. Half gallon, brought it up to level it looks like. So we're good there. McCord Corporation. A little tag on the radiator. It says McCord. Detroit, Michigan. Pretty cool on these old cars though. Absolutely everything is made in America. There you go. Gallon and a half, just about. Hopefully our battery's still got juice in it. Should. And hopefully our fuel pump still works, which is freshly rebuilt. We went through and did that. Pretty involved. I'm gonna grab the squirt bottle for fuel and we will get to cranking. Alright, a little squirt. Gotta go turn the key on. Clearly you're not hitting on all the cylinders. I think we probably ought to pull some plugs and check them out. So before we go pulling all of our spark plugs, I think I'm just going to pull one of them and we'll investigate how our spark looks, because the points on this are questionable at best. And it was running significantly better than that before, so I'm wondering if it cruded up again. I'm running pig rich, but that's probably just from trying to get it started repeatedly. So, I mean, plugs could definitely be fouled up. They're pretty gross looking. Probably deserves a whole new set, but that's okay. You know, let me thread this back in and blowgun around the plug hole. That's kind of one annoying thing with these flatheads, is they just collect water in the plug holes. There we go. Okay. Somewhere decent to ground too. There, here we go. Crank it shut. Bad ground, I think. Also, since we turn over kind of slow, we might need to get the battery charged up. I haven't actually charged it up at all, so pretty impressive that it has held over all this, sitting. Everything's been painted under here, so it's been hard to find a good ground. We'll try it against that, I guess. Yeah, I think we're just low on battery. Also, no spark that I saw, so maybe we'll take a look at our points while the battery's charging. Alright, so I got the battery charger hooked up. Let's check our points with the test light. So if it blinks, then we should know that our points are working. Which it is, so our points seem to be okay. Not to say that they're adjusted right or anything for dwell, but should at least be getting spark. Could just be that we have crappy grounds, or a crappy ground. There's a bit of bare metal over here on the head. Let me retry over here. Yeah, I don't know about that. Don't really see any spark. Oh, now I see it. Okay, so we got spark. That seems to be okay. I don't know. Let me get you over here so you guys can see it. It looks like a nice blue spark too. See, that looks like a really good spark to me. So let's, number one has good compression. So I'm gonna let the battery charge for a little bit. We'll come back and check all the holes for compression. I know previously we did have one that was low, which no big deal. That was the only one it was really missing on, if I remember right. But now obviously it's running on like 3 or something. So we'll go through and check them all, check all the plugs out. Maybe we'll throw some new plugs in. And yeah, but let's let the battery cook for a little bit and then come back. Alright, our battery's been charging for a little bit. Let's blow all the junk off the top of the engine and start pulling plugs out. There's some solid clouds of dust. Really probably gotta get new plug wires at some point. These are pretty petrified. Same story here. Crusty, but pretty much same as the others in that one. Same story. Super rich also. If I remember right, it was either 7 or 8 that was kind of low on compression. 7 looked like it was firing because it was all rich. I mean, they're all super rich, but they are there. Alright, so I did pop the cap off the distributor, and you can see the rotor does have some corrosion on the button and on the tip, and then on the inside of the cap. Definitely due for a replacement, but I doubt I can get those right now, so for now I think I'll just clean it up with some light sandpaper, and it should hopefully be good enough to at least get it back to where it was running before. Alright, so I went around, the battery's charged up a little bit, and I tested all the compression in the holes. I don't actually have a compression tester, weirdly enough, just a leak down tester. But by the finger test, they're all really healthy. I mean, they pop your finger off hard. I'll demonstrate in just a second. So I'm thinking we just got some tune-up to do, and then it's going to be running way better. And surprisingly enough, I was actually able to find most of the ignition components locally. My local O'Reilly had all the spark plugs, obviously that isn't surprising. Rotor, plug wires that should work, and a cap, but unfortunately I think these came with 2 different distributors, a Delco Remy distributor or an Autolite distributor. This one has the Autolite distributor, and the cap I got is for the Delco, so not correct, but we'll sand all the contacts on the cap and we should be in way better shape. They also had the points, but they were like $30 and I'm cheap, so if we can eke a little bit more life out of these, then let's do it. So let me show you the compression here. Number 1. Yeah, 2's a little bit. So 2's a little bit lower than 1 actually. I felt like it was popping my finger off pretty good last time, but maybe it's just my finger's not making very good seal. You can see, I would say we definitely have over 100 PSI in all the holes, and I believe this is only like a 7-to-1 compression ratio motor. Maybe it's 8-to-1, I found conflicting information, but that would mean, you know, full health, rebuilt motor, 120-ish PSI is what I'd expect to see, and it definitely feels like that in all the holes pretty much, so I don't think we have a compression issue, which is awesome. I don't really want to tear into this. Not that it'd be that bad, but parts are not cheap on this old girl. So let's get all of our new plugs in, plug wires, and see how we do. Alrighty, so let's turn our attention to our distributor. I've already had the cap off. Worked a little bit on our points, which were not terrible. Pull them up for you. Did I leave the key on? Yep, okay. So, as I was saying, worked on the points a little bit. They're definitely not perfect. May need to work on them a little bit more, but they are working. We'll check the gap at some point. I think first things first though, we need to get these old crusty wires out. They have really nice factory routing, so looks like we gotta pull our coil off and then they're squeezed under this, and hopefully our new wires will fall about in the same place. Oh, I also forgot to say, did work on the cap a little bit, so you can see it looks substantially better. Definitely not perfect, but I think it'll be okay for now until I get a new cap. The cap for this, I cannot find anywhere except special order, so that's probably what we'll have to do on this. But for now, no big deal. Alright, so let's pop those, looks like 1/2 inch bolts out. And get to routing. 7/16 actually. I think I mentioned once we get this running good, we are going to warm it up, drop the oil, which is, let me show you, I don't know if I showed you before. It's oil. It's old and black. Just smells like old oil, so that's why I've been running it, because it doesn't really smell diluted or anything like that. So I don't think we're doing any damage. But it'll be good to change that out. And then we're also going to have to check our differential, our overdrive unit, and our transmission, which all take gear oil. And then another thing we have to deal with before we start driving is we're going to have to lube all the chassis lube points. This thing has a lot of them. I can't remember, it's like 40 or something, if I remember right. Most important are the suspension and steering, because I think there's a couple lube points for some linkages and stuff. Then probably we got to deal with some lights stuff, and the wiring in this car is kind of a bit of a mess. You can see some of this here. It's all cloth wrapped, and the cloth is returning back to dirt. So it's all crumbling away. I don't really want to deal with a full rewire or anything right now, so we'll tape up the worst parts and deal with it later. But that's a big deal, because any issues there and you're dealing with, you know, burning stuff down. Set that there for now. Looks like if you get a flathead, we can pull the distributor ground off. Off she comes. Flop the coil over. Okay, and now another thing we're going to want to check actually is our firing order at some point, but I'm going to assume that's correct because it looks like this has not been touched in a very long time, and we'll just start replacing wires one by one. Wow, that isn't the cap good. Pull our coil wire out. That's crazy. There we go. I don't think that's been out for a while. Alright, so number one. So that one looks like maybe a medium wire. When I'm doing wires like this, what I like to do is get them all dangling like that, and then I kind of just make a judgment call as we're replacing wires and decide which should go where, and usually I gotta swap one or two of them. But I'm gonna say we go for the third shortest. And these are angled boots for the cap, which is not probably factory, but it should work okay. Even though it's gonna be a little bit uglier. Looks like that will just reach. We may need to reroute on the cap. Gives a little bit of length, but I'm just gonna go through, do that. No need to bore you guys with it, and bring it back once all the wires are routed. All right, all of our wires are routed. Still gotta tighten the plugs. I just plugged them in to not mess up the order. Definitely not as nicely cut the length and everything, but they are significantly better than some of the old wires. Let me see if I can find the really bad one. One of them had really bad corrosion. It's somewhere under. Anyways, that was probably the one that we were having issues with last time, because it was a really cruddy connection. So let's get our new rotor in. Might go back through here and hit the cap tabs one more time with some sandpaper. I think I'll try to get it to shiny metal as much as is possible. Yeah, you can see there's lots of crud still coming off, so I'm gonna work on that, and then we'll get the cap on and double check our firing order. Alright, so our distributor's buttoned up. Bolted our coil back up. All looks good. Now we need to get our plugs in. So I'm going to use a little bit of anti-seize I like to put on the threads. I also double checked our firing order, forgot to mention that. All looks good there. It's funny how tiny these plugs are. So I like to put just a tiny dab of anti-seize on the back of the ground strap, so that if you do accidentally go too far up, you're not going to make the spark jump to the anti-seize because it's behind the ground strap. Alright, got them all in and tightened up. I think now we can probably give her a go and see if it runs any better. I don't think that was all of our running issue. I think it's potentially fuel system related. Might need to go back through the carb, but I think it is definitely part of the problem. So go flip the key on and see if we can fire her up. Alright, here we go. Squirt. Turn our mix screws in and see where we're at in those, because we haven't done any tuning on this at all. There's 1.5 turns. Give that a go. Potentially looks like the carb's leaking. Have to check that out. But let's see what happens here. Decent. Definitely looks to be carb related. Yeah, I'd say this is about where we were before, running wise. See, we did definitely have a cylinder that's weaker than the others. It's also still cold, so there's that. It's also running great with both mix screws turned all the way in, so that's a little interesting. Probably missed a passage or something in the carb that's clogged up. It's running a lot better now that it's getting warm. So there's still an intermittent mist. Not terrible though. A little smoky. I'm sure she's a bit of an oil burner. But who knows, that might come back once, you know, she gets driven around a little bit. Yeah, running not bad. I'm definitely thinking I'll pull the carb and go back through it. I'm sure I missed something on that. But let's get it warmed up and we can drop the oil. Alright, we got some decent heat in her. Feels like our thermostat's opened up a little bit. So let's go ahead and shut it down and get the oil dropped. Alright, so let's get the oil dropped. I'm going to slide under there and see what comes out. It's still cold. Definitely has an interesting smell. Smells old. While we're waiting for that oil to trickle out, I'm going to show this. I found this after digging through the inside of the car for a little bit. Looks like this plate was last tagged in '71. And a really cool thing is, well, first of all, it's a super old plate from Idaho. And the cool thing is, this is registered in the same county I'm in. So it seems like the car has basically been in the area for its whole life. Maybe prior to coming to Idaho it was somewhere, but that would have been before '68 for sure. Which I guess even then it was a 20-year-old car, so who knows, it could have had a fair bit of life before then. Anyways, let's see what the oil's doing. I'm gonna let that trickle out for a while and then we'll get some fresh stuff in it. Alright, it's all drained out. Just looks like some really old, really gross oil. There is some sludginess. You can see a little bit here. Most of it dripped down after I picked it out at the very low part of the oil pan. So we're gonna probably run some snake oil of some type, like Marble Mystery Oil or Seafoam or something. See if we can bring that back into suspension. The detergent oil of today may be able to do that. So let's fill her up, run it for a little bit, and see. One thing I did forget to mention this time, I mentioned it when we first fired this thing up. The oil pressure gauge in the cab does read really good oil pressure. It reads like 40 psi at idle. Cold idle, I guess, 40 or 50 psi. The gauge is not very accurate, I would say. But it reads really solid oil pressure at idle. So I'm not really too worried about the engine, but we'll see about that sludge. Definitely, I would say, never been rebuilt, even though it was undergoing a restoration. So let's see. 60,000. I don't know. It could just be an original 60,000, and they didn't change the oil much, but really hard to say. Door's a little worn and stuff, so it could be 160 or who knows. Anyways, let's go get our new oil. Alright, I'm gonna run some of this 1540 Rotella. This is just the conventional T4 because it was 20 bucks. How do you beat that? So, and it's got all the stuff that this engine needs, and it's way better than any type of oil that they would have run back in the day. I think this engine calls for 6 quarts. This is just 5 quarts, so we'll fill it up and see where that puts us. Plus, we're not doing the filter right now. This is pre-modern oil filter. So this is the canister right here, and it's a bypass oil filter. So the oil in the modern engine goes directly through the oil filter housing before going to any of the bearings. Now, that doesn't mean it's getting filtered, because the oil filter in most, well, many cases, maybe most cases, is bypassing most of the oil due to the pressure differential across the filter. Anyways, doesn't matter. At idle, let's say all of the oil is going through the filter before it goes to the bearings. In this engine, that's not the case. It goes directly from the pickup to the bearings, and then there's a circuit where some oil gallery that's pressurized goes to the oil filter, and then the oil filter drains back to the pan. So that's why it's called a bypass oil filter design, because it's basically oil that's bypassing the bearings going through the filter. So we're not going to touch it. It needs changed. I don't have the canister at the moment, but that's fine. Many engines of this day did not even have an oil filter. So this also doesn't have any kind of crankcase ventilation system. Well, it has a road draft tube, which kind of uses the Venturi effect to suck any gases in the crankcase out when you're cruising. But the PCV system was a huge advancement, even though it's super simple in engine technology, because all of the crankcase vapors that are a byproduct of combustion, that's what gummed up these old engines and made them disgusting. Like, the grime you find in these is nothing like the grime you find in later engines with a PCV system. So the road draft tube is kind of the old school PCV system, but it only works when you're going, I don't know, over 30 or 40 miles an hour. Check our dipstick way down in there. Yeah, so we're half full, so it takes 6 quarts, but we're above low, so it's fine to run it as it is. And maybe I'll add a quart of some kind of snake oil later. I don't have any right now. Okay, let's fire it up. See. Hopefully no change, because there shouldn't be a change. Running really good. Let me get you in here. Alright, so this is our oil pressure gauge. It's a little sticky, so it doesn't quite read exactly right, but if we rev it up, see, it pops up. So we definitely have oil pressure. I'm not going to trust any kind of reading from that gauge, but I'm also not entirely sure if we're charging. The ammeter does work, because when you switch the car on, you can see it pegged to discharge. Well, not peg, but spring over to discharge just a little bit. So we are going to need to see if our generator's working, because that could be a function of our voltage regulator. Yeah, I mean the battery should be close to fully charged because it's been on a charger for a little bit, so maybe the voltage regulator is just not kicking on. Let's see, I forget what works in this thing. I think the radio kind of works, maybe? Makes a buzz. Yeah. When we get this thing to be a cruiser, I got some ideas on that. We'll modernize it a little bit without even touching any of the aesthetics because it looks pretty sweet. Yeah, so for any of you guys who are new to this and haven't seen the interior, it's rough, you know. She's been barn kept for a long time, so we got a lot of work to do on the interior. I mean, not a ton to just make it drivable. The headliner does need pulled down. That shouldn't be too big of a deal to make a new one. Unfortunately, these things did have a really nice wood grain look. You can see on the glove box here, but I think this sat in the sun for a long time and unfortunately just got cooked off with the dash. That's not a huge deal. The wood grain's nice, but we can figure something out to make it look decent. All this chrome is in pretty good shape. I think it'll polish up fine with some steel wool. And the biggest thing for me is this steering wheel. It used to be Bakelite covered. You can see that Bakelite is no longer, and it has these serrations for the Bakelite to cut into, and it's the Blister Maker 9000 when you're trying to rotate the wheels without moving forward. Ask me how I know. Let's see, I don't know if the fan works. I don't remember. That might be vent. Yeah, these are all C's, so, you know. Are you really going to be driving this thing in the winter anyways? Probably not. But then we just got tons of trim pieces and stuff in here. So we should be able to piece it back together and make it pretty presentable. I'm not a huge restoration guy, so if we can make it look nice and just get it to be a driver that's cool to take to town or whatever, then I'm happy with that. One thing that's crazy, this thing has no side mirrors. It does have a rear view mirror, but look at how tiny that window is. It looks tiny in the camera, and that's about how it looks in real life, so I don't even know how you look around when you're driving this thing. The visibility is very poor, to say the least, but I guess that's part of the charm. Land yacht. Show you the back seat real quick. Driver door doesn't shut great. These ones shut awesome though. All the other doors are perfect. Got rear passenger wing windows. Like I said, just tons of trim pieces that for some reason were primered. I don't know. Seat back here is in pretty good shape. It's been covered before, so I'm hoping the original seat isn't bad. Got some like Oldsmobile hubcaps up there. I have no idea. Maybe these are worth something. If anybody wants them, let me know. But overall, not in terrible shape. Passenger window glass is cracked, but it's flat, so I don't think it'll be too bad to get. But anyways, it's all taken apart. I got everything except, I believe, the rear bumper. So unfortunately, that was lost to time. Running just beautifully. Probably not quite as balanced as it was from the factory. I believe the selling point for these things is the salesman would balance a nickel or a dime maybe on the cylinder head and wouldn't even tip over. Okay, that's because it's a straight 8, so it's perfectly balanced, both primary and secondary. So I don't know if any kind of movement is normal on these. I've never seen one that's all cherried out. But really, it's pretty smooth. I mean, it's not perfect. It'll probably come back after getting driven a little bit. And after going through the carb again, because it probably needs some adjustment. Let's get the temp gun and see what we're running at. Also, you can probably hear some bearing noise. We're probably going to need to be going through the water pump at some point. Alright, so we're not even warmed up really yet. When I dropped the oil, it was cold. So that goes to show you that. Yeah, we definitely got an intermittent little skip, but it's not bad. We got a little bit of smokiness. You can see the scrapyard I've got going on there now. Yeah, there's a little bit of skip. That should be a little smoother than that, I think. Smelling a little rich to me, a little eye burny. So, like I said, the carb. Oh man, yeah, burning the eyes. Carb probably needs gone through. Again, I missed something. Yeah, big improvement from where it was, I would say. Let's check for any leaks on the carb, because it was wet before, but it could have been for me not tightening that up enough. I had to tighten this up a little bit more. There's a little fuel filter in there. Yeah, there's some moisture down there, so it's leaking out of something. Ah, there it is. Yep, the bowl is leaking right here. So we'll have to deal with that. I might have reused the gasket even though I had a new one because it looked like it was in good shape. But no big deal. This is just a Carter WDO. Pretty sweet, little 2-barrel. Predecessor to the BBD maybe. I'm just making that up probably, but also don't think the accelerator pump's pumping as much gas as it's supposed to. It is pumping gas. That little squirter right there, but I think it's supposed to pump a little bit more than that. You can see when we do that, there's a little bit of a stumble. So, should be getting a little bit more gas than that, I think. Alright, so let me shut this off and then go over. Blew a hose. Look at that. That's exciting. Let me let some of the pressure out maybe. That's probably a bad idea. Should have replaced that. Okay, there we go. Alrighty. Yeah, I probably ought to replace all that heater hose. It's a little gross. I think it's just 5/8 hose. I probably have some kicking around, but ooh, yeah. Wish you could feel that. That is something nasty. Cool. Happy that we got it running back where it was, if not a little better, last time we were working on this thing. So now I'm actually off camera going to pull the carb off and go through it real quick. I went through it on the video last time, although probably missed something. I definitely have a leak and it seems to be running rich, so we'll take a look at that. So yeah, I'll bring you guys back once I think I got the carb 100%, and we're gonna definitely replace all these coolant lines. Probably ought to do the lower hoses too. What's kind of neat is it's got mostly a steel pipe for the lower hose, and then it's just got some rubber unions, so we should be able to just get any lower rad hose and dice it up to make those connections. Alright, so I figured while I have the carb apart, I'll show you guys the issues that are causing, well, our issues. So, first up, we have a low-speed jet that goes way down in that hole, covered up by that orifice, which, I'm going to throw across the bench, which is really large, but this low-speed jet is very small. You can see through it now, but before it was pretty much plugged up. So that would be why our low-speed mix adjusters were doing nothing. Let's see what else was there. That was pretty much the main issue. The bowl had accumulated a little bit of junk. I don't know if I missed it or what. What I'm going to do now is put it back together, and there's a metering rod adjustment procedure that I'll do. I'll bring you guys along for that, and then we'll put it back in the car, and we should be running good now. Alright, so I mentioned the metering rod adjustment earlier. I think I'm going to hold off on that for now. One thing that I'm a little unsure about is the mating rod on this carburetor had a return spring, or a spring under it. I don't see that in any other diagram or anything, so we're going to leave the top off and see. My assumption would be that under engine vacuum at idle, this would be sucked down, causing it to not meter as much fuel through the jets. And then as the vacuum decreases with throttle opening, this is going to rise. Additionally, on fast throttle opening, that little arm there will lift the metering rods up before the vacuum hits. So that's my assumption of how that works. We're going to leave the top off so that we can watch it and see if that's right. But that's how the spring was before, so that's how we'll leave it. I also adjusted our choke. You may see me fighting with that. It was adjusted super lean so that when there was no heat in the engine, this was just totally floppy. So what I did is I just adjusted it so that the choke has a little bit of an opening, and then as it heats up, the spring should open and open the choke fully. Another thing I did is reduce the throttle opening. See in here, hopefully. A little rusty in there, but it's fine. We've got transfer slots way down in there. I've adjusted the throttle opening, which it looks like it opened back up for some reason, but I'm going to adjust the transfer slots so that they're about square, and that should hopefully put us at a good idle. And then we'll double check our ignition timing, which is a big part of how our idle sits. So I'm going to go put this back on the car and we'll see how it runs. Alright, so we should be good to go now. I also replaced that one hose that blew. Obviously going to be replacing all the hoses, but I got to go pick up some more hose before I do that. Also, the battery's completely topped off, so that should be good to go there. I'm going to go flip the key and we'll fire up. Alright, it's going to take a little bit to fill the bowl, but idle may be set a little low. Which means possibly our timing's off a little bit, but for now we'll just crack the throttle a hair. So you can see the metering rods are doing what I thought they would, which is get sucked down. So let's play with the idle mix a little bit. Turn it all the way in just to see if it does anything. Not really. Need to get a vacuum gauge on here. Throwing these screws way out just to see. It should start running crazy rich. Yeah, look at that. Doesn't seem to really do anything. Alright, let's check our timing. Alright, so we seem to have a little bit of improvement, but let's get our timing light set up and also throw a vacuum gauge on. Looks like to do that we are going to need to pop that pipe plug out of the intake manifold and use a pipe adapter. And then we'll also need to look on the balancer or the damper and see where our timing mark is and maybe throw some paint on there because I'm sure it's faded after all these years. Alright, let's get that pipe plug popped out. Tongue twister. No, not even tight. Look at that. Exhaust manifold is hot. Alright, good enough. Our meter hooked up. There we go. Now let's go turn our attention to the harmonic damper. So it's kind of way down there on this thing. It's gonna be tough to see, honestly. So I'm just gonna try to rotate the engine by hand. It's gonna be tricky. Should have marked it when I had the plugs out, huh? Alright, well, I don't think there's much of a chance of you guys seeing it before I mark it, so I'm just going to work on getting that turned over and put a paint mark on the timing mark. Alright, so I found our timing marks buried under a bunch of muck and filled them with paint best I can. Factory spec is 6 degrees before top dead center. We can push that up probably a fair bit because our gas is a lot better today than what they had. One thing that was kind of funny to me is how it's stamped in number 1 up dead center. One thing that's always been kind of funny to me on these older cars is how it was kind of before any of the terminology was standardized. So obviously today, and since probably, I don't know, the 50s or something, it's been top dead center. But now on this it says up dead center. Something that was kind of funny to me. But let's get it fired up and see where our timing is currently and see if it needs adjusted. Alright, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. Now I don't want to get in too close with the fan. Yeah, you're not going to be able to see it, but we are pretty much dead on at like 7. So we'll run it there. It should be fine where it's at. Let's go look at our vacuum gauge. So you can kind of see how our gauge rises and then falls pretty regularly. So that's going to indicate probably valve wear. Actually, it says probably on here somewhere. But yeah, steady regular drop indicates valve open, burnt, or chipped. That's one thing we should check. I think this thing has mechanical lifters, so we'll want to check our valve clearances. But it's not terrible. It's not dead steady like we would hope, but I mean, it makes sense. There's a little bit of valve wear. It's probably had some miles on her. I think I do hear a little bit of an irregular tick also, so we'll definitely be going through and checking our valve clearances. Unfortunately, I think that means we gotta pull our intake and exhaust manifolds, but for now, we'll run it as is. It seems to be running pretty good. If we had one that was like grossly open, we'd be able to tell. And as it warms up, this may steady out a little bit. But that's probably what's kind of causing our little shaky shake. Let's see how it changes when we adjust our idle mix. Alright, so this should have an effect. It does not. What if we tie it way in? Oh yeah, okay, that did a little bit of something. Let's give her half turn. Let's turn them both in. It's probably gonna kill it. So maybe we'll go 1.5 turns out or something. Let's see, 1/2, 1 turn. Alright, so that's all the way in on the other one. Alright, so we're at 1 turn on each. I think that's bringing it up. Sorry, there's a glare. Alright, well, there doesn't seem to be a huge difference except when you turn it all the way in. I do hear kind of an intermittent pop, 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 pop. Wondering if that's an exhaust leak. Really not a ton of blow by. I mean, we have the road draft tube also, so it could be escaping there if there is some, but I'm not sure where that popping is. Another thing is we're going to go a little bit richer once we have our air cleaner on. Alright, so I think we got the engine running about as good as it's going to get for now, which is good enough. So the next big thing I think I'm going to do is go through and tape up all of the wiring that's starting to have insulation fail. A lot of this cloth wrapped wiring is getting super brittle. Insulation wise, the wiring itself is fine. For example here, but I think what I'm going to do is just tape it up with some electrical tape, because the last thing we want is any of this wiring to ground out, or I guess the opposite in this case, and start a fire. That would be very bad. So I'm going to go through, tape up any wiring that's suspect. Obviously the best thing to do would be to cut it back at least into the harness and resplice to good insulation, or really just rewire the whole car, but I do not want to do that. So for now we're just going to tape. Alright, so I got the worst of it all taped up. Mainly was concerned with those regulators back there. The rest of the wires that kind of went bare are mainly just like sensors, so if they ground out, no big deal. But those obviously would cause a problem. So we should be good in the engine bay, other than going through and greasing our shift linkages and everything else that we can get to from in here. Let's go to the back of the car and look at getting some lights in. Alright, so the trunk here is a little bit of a disaster. We got just a bunch of parts thrown in here. Lights, I don't even know where this one goes, but we do have tail lights. Kind of stylish looking ones too. No bulbs. Let's see, are the bulbs still plugged in somewhere? Over here they are. Wonder if they work. Filaments are intact. So obviously we have a brake and turn and tail light. Over here I don't see any bulbs so much. Okay, well I'm going to dig through here and see if I can find the bulb holders. I don't know if they... oh, is this them? No, that's whatever this is. Bumper brackets, hinge for the trunk, which maybe I think we'll put back on. Fuel door, which, here's the original color. Obviously way faded and stuff, but it's a gray. I don't know, I'm trying to decide if we're gonna, because I'd like to repaint this car because it's dead straight. But I'm trying to decide if this fuel cap obviously was taken off a different car, but that's a really nice blue. Original is the gray, but I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know. Got our other tail light back here. Ah, there's the wiring. Cool. Look at that. Great shape. Cool. So I think these just shove into that connector over there. So I'm going to do that. And then let's test our bulbs. Alright, so I got bulbs plugged in on both sides. I'm going to go flip the headlight switch and let's see if we got tail lights. Brake lights would be the ticket, but I think it's this one. Maybe. Does it only come on with the key? Oh. Dough. Took the battery off while I was shorting wires out like crazy. Alright. Now let's see. Okay, so headlight's supposedly on. You see the light there. If I remember right, the headlights worked last time. But not right now. Let's see if we got tail lightage. They ground through the body, obviously, so okay, that's a no. But let's see why our headlights don't work. Maybe, can't remember, maybe only the brights worked. Could have sworn those worked. The headlights are off apparently. Did I turn them off? Oh, we got marker. Nothing. Okay. Well, that's weird. But we do have a marker, so the circuit's kind of working. Nothing back here. Okay, well I'm going to play around with that for a little bit, see if I'm just missing something, because I could have sworn the headlights worked just fine before, so I'll bring you guys back. Okay, there we go. I think we were on parking light mode maybe, which should still flip the taillights on, so. We may need to get the test light back here. I don't know if we really even have any good bare metal to ground to. Alright, so we got brake lights. That's the main thing I wanted, so we'll just hook it up. There actually wasn't anything. I think it was just crappy grounds back here, so I cleaned up a little bit and whatnot. I did take a look under the dash, and the wiring all looks in pretty good shape. It's brittle, so I don't want to touch it, but not bad. I did see, apparently you can get whole new pre-made wiring harnesses for this thing for like a couple $100, so that may be the route I go on this, because this cloth wrapped wiring is not long for the world. So anyways, let's get our light housing put in on both sides, and then we should just be off to the races. I don't think our directionals are working, but who cares about that, right? Thankfully, whoever was working on this last put all the hardware back in. I don't know which way it's supposed to go. Not that way. This could be for the other side too. Oh, I guess it does go that way. Did have one of the studs pull out. Go fight that real quick. There we go. Alright, let's see if it will make good enough ground. Yep. Look at that. I don't know if it's top or bottom. I'm gonna say top. Ah, I've been putting these in wrong. There's a little, I'll show you on the other lights. Let's see if our other bulb works. I took that one out. This one's a little rustier. Test light to light up. No. Okay, I think it just came unplugged a little bit. I think we just got cruddy ground here. Or maybe the bulb's not rotating all the way. There we go. Alright. Good. Other taillight housing looks really nice also. I'll go ahead and put that in, and then, you know, real quick actually, let me go, I have the switch jumper right now, let me go pull the jumper, and then also let's test our taillights. Alright, I'm going to hit the brakes now, check if our switch is working. Yep, sweet. Now headlight. Awesome. That's a win. Okay, I'm gonna go put the other one in, and then we'll come on back. Alrighty, we got both lights working. I also went ahead and got our trunk hinges started. I'm missing one bolt, but I'm sure it's somewhere in the abyss down here. Let's go, I guess, grab the trunk and see how hard it's gonna be to line this thing up. I believe the trunk latch is built into the trunk, so hopefully that is all there, and hopefully the bolts are in the trunk. I guess we'll find out. I don't remember. Alright, so I also went ahead and got the trunk on. See, we're missing a little bit of hardware. That's the bolts I had. Unfortunately, I had 3 too few, so also got the latch on. Cool latch. And I didn't bother really setting the body lines super great, because it'll be coming back off at some point, hopefully. Whole thing needs to shove that way just a hair. You can see it's a little tight. First time it's had the trunk on, and who knows how long though. Looks pretty good. do have this back here, I think. Not in bad shape. Probably polish right up. Alright, well, I'm still waiting on the tire puller tool, so I guess let's crawl under and do the dirty job. Drop some ancient gear oil. Okay, open this, look at this there. There we go. Okay. There we go. Okay. Finally ready. Hopefully not empty, but probably is. Nope. Food actually looks good. Okay. Finally got the fill out. Let that drip dry. Honestly, I might just leave it as it is. Fluid looked pretty good, honestly. And this takes hypoid oil, which is basically just the modern equivalent is GL5. So that's what we'll put in here. 90 weight or whatever. I don't think it's really very picky. So I'm gonna use what I got on hand. Alright, I'm actually gonna have to run to the store to get some oil. But I do have the wheel puller now, so let's pull the drum off and see if we're gonna have to rebuild the wheel cylinder back here. Alright. See if this will come off by wrench power. Not with this wrench. Yeah, just grab the impact, make it easy. Alright, I actually don't have a socket big enough, so we'll see what we can do here. Ugh. Oh boy. There we go. Alright. Hopefully I wasn't in the way of the camera. So we'll just loosen this a few turns. Alrighty. Then we got this thing to beat on. Probably dead blow's not the way to go, but might just do it. Yeah, let's get bigger boy. Oh, I need to take the park brake off. Alright, here we go. Wowee. We're just turning the the whole wheel now at this point. Man. Let's see if I can back the adjuster off. I wonder if it's grabbing on the shoes. I don't think that should be grabbing now. Alright, well, we're going to try the impact. Woo! Well, the impact broke the puller before it even budged the wheel. So, I think this is going to keep its secrets for now. And, I don't know, I'll have to get another puller and maybe heat around the hub. It's weird it's stuck on there so bad because it's not rusty. Alright, well, that's staying on. So, we're going to assume the rear brakes are just great. While we're out on the yard, just in the driveway, I'll stomp on the brakes really hard, and if they don't give, then we'll call them good. I think I already did that test back when I did the brakes, but we will retest. There you go. We'll just rerun the cotter key because I don't think we're really at much risk of it coming out. Good enough. We will revisit that some other day.